Hi, this is a Friends Journal author chat, and I'm Martin Kelly, senior editor. And with me today is John Andrew Gallery. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Martin. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to have you. You are the author of the April issue article, The Gospel Model of Fatherly Love. And I'll read you the bio that we have for you there. John Andrew Gallery lives in Philadelphia, PA, and attends its Chestnut Hill Meeting. He has authored many articles in Friends Journal and several self-published spiritual books. He has authored 4 Pendle Hill pamphlets, including the just released Wait and Watch Spiritual Practice, Rehearsal, and Performance, and the website John Andrew Gallery, allruntogether.com. So congratulations on the new pamphlet.
Thank you.
And as you noted, there's a YouTube video with you by Pendle Hill for that. So we'll add that to the comments there. So people don't get enough of you here, you and I talking, they can go and see more. So what inspired you to write about fatherly love for us?
Well, I've been writing short spiritual essays for many years, and they have become a way of really helping me to understand what I think, and occasionally they seem worthwhile sharing with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they all begin in the same way. They all begin with something external that sort of stimulates something within me. I think of it as sort of 2 tuning forks. The external tuning fork vibrates, it sends some vibrations to me, and I start vibrating, back.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I need that external influence or inspiration. Things don't just start in my head,
Mm-hmm.
but once I have that and can figure out how to begin to say something about it, then pretty much ideas seem to just flow pretty naturally after that.
Yeah. I mentioned that prompt. Do you do a lot of vocal ministry in your meeting? I'm curious.
A lot of what?
Vocal ministry. Do you give a lot of vocal ministry, and does that also have that sort of same prompt or
Well,
not?
the answer to that is yes and no.
Okay.
I used to do a lot, but I find that Zoom is very unconducive to vocal ministry, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I tend to attend meeting for worship more on Zoom than in person. So I'm more silent now than I have been in the past. But it's a good question because the process that starts me writing is really the same type of process that might start me to give a message in meeting for worship.
Yeah, it felt like that. It seemed like that could be the case.
Right.
So the process in this, I'm sorry.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
there too, I look for an external
Mm-hmm.
stimulus, which could be something someone else says or a stranger appearing in the room or some event, but something that is external to myself.
Great. And what was the external impulse here, the first harmonic resonance here that started this train of thoughts?
Well, I said that in the article really that when I was putting away this creche scene that I have and set up at Christmas time,
Mhm.
the last 2 figures that I got to were Joseph and baby Jesus. And for some reason, when I picked up Joseph, I just stopped and looked at it in a way that, normally I would just take it and put it in the box.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was that at the end of last year, around Christmas time, I gave an adult class at Chestnut Hill on what I called the real first Christmas. And what I did was to discuss the way the birth of Jesus is described in the Gospel of Matthew, not the Gospel of Luke, which is the one that we all really resonate with.
Mm-hmm.
In Matthew, Joseph is really the main figure. And so that was on my mind already that I'd been thinking about Joseph as being such a prominent figure in Matthew's story that I think that contributed to my pausing and looking at Joseph and then seeing this connection between him as a loving father and my experiences when my two sons were first born as well.
Yeah, you said Joseph had all the visitations from the angels too, which I hadn't really thought about, but it was very important. I mean, he was in a awkward situation there with his future bride already pregnant. He had to do a lot of trusting to actually stay with her.
Absolutely. And, in the story in Matthew, he's the one who's told to give the baby the name Jesus. He's told many things. In fact, more angels appear to Joseph than I think appeared to anyone else.
And what lessons for you did you come up with as for you as a father from these angels visiting and other stories from Matthew, so the appearance of Joseph in Matthew?
I think that I would have benefited a lot more from some of these thoughts when my children were really younger.
Mm.
So now it's more like reflecting on did I do well or not by these ideas as opposed to giving me actual direction of how to do it. But I think the challenge that I tried to highlight there, is the one that every parent has, which is um, to be willing to let your child go at some point and pursue their own interests and directions and not
Mhm.
want them to just be a reflection of your interests. And I think for everyone, that's a challenge. And it's not just a one-time event challenge, but a challenge throughout the experience that you have over the course of your children's life.
Yeah, it's a daily challenge. As a father of four, I know it can be a daily challenge when they get stubborn and want to push back against something that you're wanting them to do. And you have to realize that you actually want them to be able to be stubborn and to stand up for themselves. And even though it's inconvenient at the moment, it's probably what they need to do.
That's true. And I think it's particularly difficult when they're younger and they're more dependent on you, but want to be independent as well.
Mm. So one of the other stories you talk about is Zebedee's story, who in the Bible it's sort of a minor character. You're not really focused on him, but Jesus comes along and lures his two sons away to be part of his band here. Um, Not a smart business move, perhaps, um, but what did Zebedee feel? I mean, because here was his very independent-minded sons, I guess, just sort of wandering off from the family business.
One of the things that I think is fun to do is to take a sort of a minor event in the Gospels and really create a scene around it. And this one I've always enjoyed particularly. And it was when I wrote this, I think gave me more insight into Zebedee when I could see him standing there and just yelling, "Where do you guys think you're going? There's work to be done here." And somehow when you try to, make a scene out of it, elaborate on it, new insight comes into what the characters may be doing. And that's where I began to think about, well, he had a choice. He could tell him to get back to work, or he could say, go with my blessings and enjoy yourself. Um, we have no idea which one, he really would have done. But that's why I said that I thought the story of the prodigal son really gives you insight into these other stories, because there clearly the father does send off his son with his blessing and with resources to go and pursue his own direction.
At the
And
beginning of the story, sure, yeah.
so, I mean, to me, it says, okay, it's more likely we hope that Zebedee would do the same.
But of course, the prodigal son wasted all of that time. He didn't become a follower of Jesus, but gambling and prostitution and whatever else might have happened. But yet the father forgave him when he came back. And everyone, whenever this ever comes up, like in a Bible study, and everyone's like, it's unfair. Why should the son who stayed and was the good son and was doing all the work, why does he get short shrift here, and the prodigal son, the bad son, is welcomed?
So I think there are two misunderstandings there.
Okay.
It says he wasted his money, but how do we really know he wasted his money? He went off, he enjoyed himself, he had exciting experiences.
Mhm.
How do we know that those experiences weren't really critical to whatever he became later in his life? Why are we judging so quickly? Did you, when you were younger, go off and do some crazy things?
A
Well,
few.
many people do. And so I think it's a mistake to think that his experiences were worthless and insignificant. The second is his father does not forgive him. And this is really, really important. The son comes with a speech he's already prepared,
Mhm.
and the father says, I don't want to hear any of that. I love you. I gave you the money with no strings attached. I didn't ask you to do good work or whatever. There's nothing to forgive. You enjoyed yourself. You did what you thought you wanted to do. My love is unchanged. Welcome back. It's nice to see you. And the reason I think that's so important is that if you want to think that the father in the story is mirroring God's attitude towards human beings,
Mhm.
it does not forgive either. You know, God does not attach strings to us when we're born. His love is continuous and perpetual. And I think that's a real important message in that parable that's often misunderstood by most people.
It's a powerful concept, and I'm trying to imagine, with my kids, someone did something kind of dumb or something, there's that initial like, why are you doing this? But it's a very powerful model to just say like, I don't care why you did that, and I accept you anyway.
It is. I think it really challenges, particularly when your children do things that they might regret, or don't lead them down the best paths. To be able to maintain that sense of a loving connection is a real challenge.
And have you been able to do that with your sons?
Well, I think you'd have to ask them.
Yeah, we can get them on the chat. We'll have a
But
fun chat with them.
I would say I think that I've done a reasonably good job. My younger son is the one who has always challenged me the most in terms of having independent ideas and wanting to do things his own way. And so he has been more of the teacher that I might say,
Okay.
to teach me to maintain my unconditional love, where my older son's personality is much closer to my own. And so it's been somewhat easier for me to maintain those feelings with him.
Mhm. As you said, when we read the prodigal son, we always think of the father as being God, as a stand-in for God. So it's interesting to think about, well, he's a model for us as parents as well. Um,
If I can put in a little plug here,
sure.
um, I wrote a book that's called The Living in the Kingdom of God, and the book is a discussion of a few of the parables of Jesus.
Mhm.
And the idea that I put forward in that book is that each of unfortunately, the parables are all about men, even though I think they apply more broadly, but each of the men in the parables is a person who is already living in the kingdom of God. And his behavior in the parable is Jesus' way of illustrating how a person living in the kingdom of God should behave. So the father in the prodigal son is illustrating that. The Good Samaritan dealing with the man who is beaten. These are people who Jesus is telling these stories as a way of illustrating if you want to be a person living in the kingdom of God, these are the characteristics of how you should behave. And I think that if you look at it that way, the parables have extremely powerful practical advice, more so than if you think these are analogies for God versus human beings.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it. Great. Well, and I'll find that book, link to that book, and we'll put it also in the show notes so people can see that. Um, Anything else do you want to talk about, Kahlil Gibran? You had some really wonderful images shared. The one quote, "Your sons are not your sons; they are the sons and daughters of life, longing for itself." This idea that we do need to let our children go.
I've always loved that section of the book, The Prophet. And I think it's a beautiful description, I think, of the attitude to have towards your children. And it's also a very challenging one, but it's put in such beautiful poetic, form that it's marvelous to read. And this image of, the archer, God, you, the bow, and your children, the arrow, I think is um, that connected to me immediately when I started writing this essay, because I've always found it to be an extremely moving passage.
Yeah, as parents, we are part of God's process of continuing, and we're just another step of that. So yeah, you are bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. It is a very powerful image.
It is, yes. And the thing that I have to remind myself about is that, well, once I was the arrow too. And I think if you think about that, at least for me, it helped me to think about my own parents in a different way than I normally would.
Mhm. That's great. Well, John, thank you for sharing this article with us, and also sharing this video interview. And we'll be having this as part of the article there, embedded in there, and people get to read it. It's a featured story today, and I'm glad you've come here to share this with us.
Thank you, Martin, and thank Friends Journal very much for publishing it.